Test. Wednesday, March 18, 2020. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Coronavirus still dominating the coverage. Stock market drops in a huge way. Donald Trump announces the Department of Defense and the Veterans Department, all their assets are going to be used to affect what is happening. Unemployment claims blowing up all across the country. Also, parents are struggling trying to figure out how do you deal with the issue of homeschooling their children, and it's also showing the dramatic gap between what some kids have at home. In fact, in Dallas, 40% of the school kids in Dallas do not have internet at home. Yeah, that's real. We'll talk to Steve Perry about that. Also, y'all know we have crazy-ass white people segment. Watch some little crazy-ass white boy go call a black woman the N-word. All she said was 3 words to her daughter. Get on this. Daughter proceeded to whoop that white boy's ass. Where do y'all see that video? It's time to bring the funk and Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time. And it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's Uncle Roro, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
All right, folks, 7,048. That's the number of coronavirus cases in the United States, in every state, including Washington, D.C., and 3 U.S. territories. At least 116 patients with the virus have died. Now, Donald Trump continues to give updates on what is going on, primarily because he's been screwing this thing up from the get-go. Here's what he had to say today.
To begin by announcing some important developments in our war against the Chinese virus. We'll be invoking the Defense Production Act just in case we need it. In other words, I think you all know what it is, and it can do a lot of good things if we need it, and we will have it all completed, signing it in just a little while, right after I'm finished with this conference. I'll be signing it. It's prepared to go. So we will be invoking the Defense Production Act.
All right, so you heard him call this the Chinese virus, who's actually asked a question about Cynthia Vega of ABC News regarding that. And so here's what she had to say. Henry, go to my iPad, please.
You keep calling this the Chinese virus. There are reports of dozens of incidents of bias against Chinese Americans in this country. Your own aide, Secretary Azar, says he does not use this term. He says ethnicity does not cause the virus. Why do you keep using this? A lot of people say it's racist.
It's not racist at all, no, not at all. It comes from China. That's why. It comes from China. I want to be accurate. Yeah, please, John, please. I have great love for all of the people from our country, but as you know, China tried to say at one point, maybe they stopped now, that it was caused by American soldiers. That can't happen. It's not going to happen, not as long as I'm president. It comes from China.
You keep calling this the Chinese virus. There are
not only that, the White House, they've actually doubled down on this as well. And I'm going to pull this up in just one second. I was on shortly, a little while ago, and they even decided to drop a video that they put together calling this the Chinese virus. And so this is infuriated lots of people on this. I'm going to try to find that video for y'all in a second. But again, it's bothering lots of different people. We'll talk about this a second with our panel. But not only that, again, what you're seeing now this White House now try to be a hell of a lot more serious when it comes to targeting what's going on. And so Trump has even put this video out. They're trying to use the White House official account to try to drum up interest and support, putting out a variety of people, including his Surgeon General, Dr. Jerome Adams. Here's that video.
As the nation's doctor, I often get asked, what should I do if I think I might have coronavirus? Well, it's important to know the symptoms. They include fever, cough, and shortness of breath. If you're having these symptoms or worry that you may have coronavirus, please call your healthcare provider. We don't want you to go into the ER or the doctor's office without talking to them first, because you might spread coronavirus to someone else. They'll help you think through and learn how to react, including figuring out where to go get tested if necessary. As the nation's doctor, I often get asked.
There is the question of where do you go get testing? That was one of the issues that we saw even come up today, where in the news conference they were asked that question about testing. And that's still one of the fundamental problems that this administration has, is that they have not been able to roll out the appropriate number of tests in order for people to actually get tested. So they stand there, they say, well, this is what's happening. And of course, all of these different things are going on. But the problem still comes up. Do you have the level of testing that is necessary in this country? Unfortunately, that is not the case. As I said today, they stood before the cameras and held that briefing. I want to see if we could, guys, if you can go to some of that. And so go ahead and go to my iPad. All right, so we're sitting here. Let's see if we can pull it up here. So we're trying to do their broadcast, but it has been very interesting in terms of how you've seen this response take place. We're going to have it for a second. Some more of that news conference today from the White House as they're trying to get a handle on it. The Secretary of Defense spoke. The head of Veteran Affairs spoke. What's interesting about that is, isn't it amazing how they're now coming before the cameras one day after the New York Times writes a story saying that, oh, they've been missing in action? This is a guy who only follows media pressure. That's exactly what happens. All kind of people are trying to send warning signs. Here's a video, a TikTok video, some healthcare workers put out trying to get people to understand what's happening with the coronavirus. All right, folks, and so many people are getting in on this whole deal. Even my man, Uncle Luke, said, enough is enough, damn it. Test everybody in America.
Message to the United States government. Listen, y'all need to stop this bullshit. It's real simple. Give everybody the test. If you have it, you go into quarantine, you get treatment. If you don't, you go about the rest of your life. If you do not test people, what's going to end up happening is you won't know who have it. You got people that got it. I'm looking at a video every day of the mayor of Miami, and I know him personally, and he's sitting on there saying he has no symptoms. So you're asking people to go get tested who have symptoms. What about the people who don't have symptoms? Who are walking around, don't even know they have it, and they got it. And they're infecting other people. Just fucking test everybody, Trump, and the rest of you fucking idiots. If you got it, you go in quarantine and you get treatment. If you don't.
Sound kind of basic to me. Again, here's the news conference that took place at the White House where Donald Trump was hopefully trying to get people to calm down. But it's amazing every time he talks, stock market keeps going down. So roll some of that news conference.
Alabama last year, also a tornado, and then obviously the numerous hurricanes in different locations that were, in some cases, very devastating, and in every case, FEMA came through. This is a very different kind of a work for FEMA, but they will come through, as they always do. We have tremendous people, tremendous talent in FEMA. We're sending, upon request, the 2 hospital ships. They're being prepared right now. They're massive ships. They're the big white ships with the Red Cross on the sides. One is called the Mercy and the other is called the Comfort. And they are in tip-top shape. They soon will be. They're getting ready to come up to New York. I spoke with Governor Cuomo about it. He's excited about it. And I also, we haven't made the final determination as to where it's going to go on the West Coast. The Comfort is located now in San Diego, and it's going to be, we'll be picking the destination fairly shortly. So those 2 ships are being prepared to go, and they can be launched over the next week or so, depending on need. Earlier this week, the first clinical trial of the vaccine candidate for the virus began in Washington State, as you probably know. The genetic sequence of the virus was first published in January, but thanks to the unprecedented partnership between the FDA, NIH, and the private sector, we've reached human trials for the vaccine just 8 weeks later. That's a record by many, many months. It used to take years to do this, and now we did it just in a very short while. That's the fastest development in history of what we're doing with regard to the vaccine. We're making very, very big progress. Today, I can announce further steps to expand testing capacity. We're working with several groups to determine if the self-swab, a much easier process than the current process that's not very nice to do, I can tell you, because I did it. But we have a current process that's a little bit difficult. If you have it done, the groups are working on determining if a self-swab by an individual is as effective as the other. The other is very effective, very accurate. But we're going to see if we can do a self-swab, which is would be a lot more popular, I can tell you that. So, and that would be administered also.
Okay, I've never seen somebody with such limited vocabulary by saying, you know, we got these big white ships. Here's the problem. One of the ships he's saying that when the Secretary of Defense came up saying we're going to dispatch, it's actually undergoing maintenance right now in Virginia. Y'all, it can't even go out for weeks. See, here's the deal. And this is the problem when Trump talks. He lies so much that you actually can't believe the lie until you verify what he says, because he'll just make it up. Literally, one of the ships that he's talking about is not going to go out. It's literally right now, y'all, undergoing maintenance in Virginia. And they've sent the order down saying, hey, can we speed this whole thing up? The other problem that you're dealing with on this whole deal is when you talk about how they are botching everything. Okay, the New York Times yesterday dropped a story talking about the reason why all of a sudden they are taking this thing so seriously. And that is because of a particular report that was issued that's showing the severity of this problem. Now, what's also crazy here is that, you know, what you're dealing with is that story said that Veterans Affairs, which actually is the backup health system in case the health system crashes, they hadn't even received any orders. The military and the Department of Defense hadn't received any orders. When they dispatched some of the federal government masks, they were already expired. Okay, I'm sorry, who doesn't check the date of the mask before you issue them? This is what you're seeing, people just bungling in operation. And the reason this thing is significant, again, why this matters, we play for you the video of those healthcare workers who were saying, we can't go home. We're trying to protect y'all as well. But here's the other deal. Yesterday, Donald Trump lied again. He said, I've always seen this as a pandemic. This, y'all, is a video posted by Senator Kamala Harris on February 12th, 2020. Let me say this again. This is not a video she posted today trying to slam them. This is a video of a hearing of the Department of Homeland Security that she posted on February 12th. Play it.
The American people also, Mr. Chairman, need to hear from the officials who are currently responsible for addressing this. And we need a public hearing with current government officials as soon as possible. It is critical to my state of California. I have spoken with some of the current officials and asked them why they are not here today. And they did not have they did not have a good response for why they are not. In fact, they went on to say, well, we have to take time to prepare talking points. The American people deserve them to be here this morning.
Did y'all just hear that? Okay, y'all probably missed that. I want you to play that again.
The American people also, Mr. Chairman, need to hear from the officials who are currently responsible for addressing this. And we need a public hearing with current government officials as soon as possible. It is critical to my state of California. I have spoken with some of the current officials and asked them why they are not here today. And they did not have a, they did not have a good response for why they are not. In fact, they went on to say, well, we have to take time to prepare talking points. The American people deserve them to be here this morning.
But he's been on top of this whole deal. If you want to see how also this is just a complete shit show and how Donald Trump literally cannot properly educate Americans, this is today's news conference when he hands the baton to Vice President Mike Pence. I want you to listen to what Mike Pence says in the first 60 seconds. It is as if Trump doesn't have the capacity to read this information himself. Listen.
Thank you, Mr. President. The White House Coronavirus Task Force met this morning, and now that we have cases in all 50 states, we're continuing to move out on the President's call to bring the full resources of the federal government, a full partnership with every state and territory, the full power of the American economy to support businesses and families. As the President says to us and every day, we'll do whatever it takes. We're all in this together. Yesterday, the President met with the tourism industry executives and also had an engaging discussion with all the top companies in our industrial and medical supply chain. The President, as you all are aware, also announced today that by mutual consent, the northern border to Canada will be closed to non-essential travel. This does not include essential travel or the transit of goods, but it was through mutual discussion that took place this morning between the President and Prime Minister Trudeau, and the Department of Homeland Security will be effectuating that decision. The President spoke with some of the nation's top business leaders today, again, to speak about the supply chain in the country. For our part, we're going to be conducting a conference call later today with state and local health officials to renew our ongoing commitment of cooperation and collaboration. As the President said last week in signing the Stafford Act, he stood up the National Response Coordination Center, and today at the President's direction, FEMA has gone to level 1.
Can you explain, can y'all just explain to me, I just want to know, can y'all explain to me, what is the purpose of Pence coming up said, the President said this, the President met with, the President met with. He's standing right there. Does he not have the capacity to actually tell us that himself? My panel right now is Scott Bolden, lawyer here in D.C., Eugene Craig Organization.
I'm more than a lawyer.
I don't.
Would you use my title?
What the hell is your title?
I'm former chair of the NBA Political Action Committee, and I'm a former state chair of the D.C. Democratic Party.
Right, that's a whole bunch of formers. So Eugene, I don't understand.
Managing partner of a large law firm too.
Okay, that's cute. I said you were a lawyer. Eugene, I don't understand. I mean, literally, dude, you're standing right there.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is this. What this shows is that Trump is inept, right? And it shows that, you know, to some degree, as painful as this may say, thank God we have Mike Pence there, somebody that kind of understands government and how government is supposed to work. Because what we see there is that Donald Trump he's inept. He has no understanding how government is supposed to work. He has no understanding how the full force of a federal government is supposed to respond to a pandemic or any type of actual emergency or disaster. I mean, there should have been testing taking place a month ago. I mean, we could have used the World Health Organization's test. You know, he should have been helped coordinating all the states' National Guards to help facilitate these tests. I mean, the Army Corps of Engineers should have been building, makeshift hospitals across the country. I mean, you know, and other situations, natural disasters and pandemics. One of the things that would have been mobilized were cruise ships to act as floating hospitals. So you're not just relying on the USS Comfort and the other one.
I just don't. It's just illogical to watch this every day. Well, to watch what goes on, and to have someone who is supposed to be the person who is the most reassuring. We're on top of this.
He ain't got that in
doing.
him.
And then
He has
comes
never
out,
asked for
he
forgiveness.
comes
You're
out,
asking him for
he
something
comes
he doesn't
out
have.
and sounds halfway intelligent, and the media's like, "Oh my God!" I mean, Dana Bash on CNN. Oh my,
She's in the
oh my
bag
God!
of-
And it's kind of like, you know, that's not gonna last. And then this morning at
And he's
9,
reading it,
and
by
then
the
this
way.
morning at 9 a.m. he's trashing sleep, and then he literally says in the news conference, "Sleepy Joe Biden." I mean, it's like, what the? Go ahead.
He's only programmed. It doesn't bother me that the vice president said what the president did. It's a bit odd, but who knows? I'm more concerned about the fact that we're way behind, one.
Yeah.
Two, this is not something you can catch up with right away. Look at Italy. Thirdly,
425 deaths overnight.
exactly, and they're on total lockdown. But here's the other thing,
The water's clear.
that we're not prepared to get prepared in an efficient manner as well. So, for example, you have the Health and Human Services leading this kind of pandemic response. Well, wait a minute now. Where is the FEMA, if you will? Because under FEMA with natural disasters in the U.S., they run and call the shots, and they have access to every government entity.
Well,
But you
fi-
first-
well,
you first need-
again,
you first need a-
finally,
a DHS secretary.
But finally, okay, FEMA's brought in, and again,
They're just on the team. They're not running.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Because how he views FEMA's role is just, okay, y'all do little stuff over here. Now, again, when you have no understanding of the federal apparatus.
And you won't listen.
When you won't, then the excuse is, well, we've never seen this before. Okay, but there's a reason you have a federal apparatus. There's a reason why you have procedures in place. Well, you have people in place. No, you have none of this. And so the problem is still, I was watching Bill Ackerman on CNBC. He said,
30-day shutdown.
but he's right. The real, and I said the other day, Americans are freaking the hell out because they can't handle if you say shelter for 30 days. He said, you're going to have to shut the nation down for 30 days, do massive, widespread testing, so you have an understanding
of where it is,
of where we're going.
And what the real numbers are.
Right.
Yes.
You
Exactly.
can't, but when your whole modus operandi is, I don't want big numbers because you're afraid of the repercussions. So Ackerman's whole deal is you can't do this piecemeal.
They're coming anyway.
This whole 15-day thing, look, I'm telling you, initially it was, okay, governors, then it was like, okay, don't congregate with 1,000 people. Then it was like 500. Then it was 250. Then it was 50. It was 50 on Sunday. Then on Monday morning, they said it was 10. Now you have Governor Cuomo of New York, who has ordered businesses to be at no more than 50% of employee capacity.
Yeah.
So what's happened, because the Obama, you cannot get control of something as long as you have dumbasses on spring break in Miami, thousands on the beach, whatever. No, you're literally going to have to say, shut it all down, test, massive testing, massive assessment, and the testing can't just be like the Surgeon General. If you're showing symptoms, go to your doctor. Okay, so then explain to me now, but explain to me the NBA players who have tested positive for coronavirus who don't have symptoms.
They found 60 tests somewhere.
But the thing is,
there's one other agency that I want you to talk about, or I think we should talk about, because they've been completely absent too. They built bridges, they built hospitals all around the world, right? The Army Corps of Engineers are capable of addressing this.
Okay, but he mentioned it because he mentioned it today only, Eugene, because it was Governor Andrew Cuomo 2 days ago.
One more time, somebody that understands the government.
Give me the damn Army Corps of Engineers.
And who has called out his own National Guard.
Right, but that's why.
Listen. What you're seeing right now is actually the beauty of the American system, right? The federalism of the American system. Where we have a breakdown in the federal government, you have governors who are, the main over their states stepping up. You have Governor Hogan stepping up. You have Cuomo stepping up. You have Whitmer stepping up. Even DeSantis down in Florida is doing his best to try to control what's going on.
And he's attacking them.
And he's attacking.
He attacked the governor of Michigan.
And the thing is this. We have somebody that's inept that does not understand government inside the White House. I mean, the best thing Team Trump could do right now, I'll be honest with you, is either to put this thing completely in the hands of Vice President Pence or bring in somebody like Barack Obama to actually handle the situation. Because, I mean, because the thing is right now, you can't worry about markets, you got to worry about human life. And right now, he's worried about markets.
You need leadership on the ground. For example, a guy like General Onray, who dealt with New Orleans when the floods hit and occurred.
Absolutely.
And with real leadership and a team that believes in him and have one goal and objective: get it done. Save people, rebuild, what have you. That type of leadership has been lacking so far
from day one in
this
this administration.
But no one
from day one in this administration.
That person.
And look, I mean, listen, FEMA falls on the DHS. You have an entire hierarchy over at DHS that's obliterated. You have no secretary, no confirmed secretary, no confirmed deputy secretary. They try to throw Cuccinelli in there. The court just said he was illegally appointed.
FEMA is the main agency anyway.
But here's the piece, though. But again, though, what you have, though, you have so much focus, unfortunately, on what's happening with the stock market. That, to me, is an issue. Bill Spriggs, of course, is AFL-CIO economist, formerly head of the economics department at Howard University. Bill, this is the problem that I have here with this whole deal. The coronavirus, the whole focus has been driven largely by stock market. It hasn't really been a health issue. Now, all of a sudden, we're seeing the economic ramifications, stock market going down. We wiped out all of the stock market gains since Trump has been president. We're now at the levels when Obama left the White House. We're now seeing unemployment numbers, claims blowing up all across the country. They're talking about a $1 trillion infusion. There are others who are saying, no, this thing is so significant. You're going to have to literally, it could be as high as 5, 10, 15, 20, $30 trillion in terms of sending money directly to the United States, directly to U.S. citizens. I mean, that's the type of situation that we are in, because at the core of this bill, we still don't know how big of a problem this is, because we have not had massive widespread testing.
Well, we didn't have the testing, so one of the problems is even the steps that have been taken, we don't have a way to evaluate how well they're performing because of that. But this is also an economic issue, and it's an economic issue and a health issue, because this is a downturn that's centered around service sector workers. We're shutting down the restaurant and drink establishments. There are 12 million Americans who are employed in food and drinking establishments. That's the size of our manufacturing workforce. So what we've just done is pretty much equivalent to telling every factory in the United States close when you think about how many people are involved. But these are low-wage workers. Most of them do not have paid leave. Many of them have no leave at all. They don't get to take sick days. Many of them have earnings that are too low to meet the earnings test to get unemployment from their state. Many of the states have put up very poor systems for people to access unemployment. So we're talking about a real catastrophe from a health and economic perspective when you look at the frontline workers who are being affected, and think about the frontline health workers that you are hearing are catching the disease because the hospitals and the administrators fought against implementing OSHA regulations that would ensure that workers would have the proper protection. So we're going into this in Washington, D.C. Just recently. We had an EMS station where one worker tested positive, and now the rest are under quarantine.
Well, and again, that's where we're struggling in such a huge way, because what people don't understand, when you talk about this whole issue, what people don't have with those resources, when you listen to the Surgeon General say, call your doctor, what in the hell do you do with the people who don't have doctors? The number of low-income people who, frankly, rely on emergency rooms. Then you have an administration that hated the Affordable Care Act, did everything they could do to knock it down. Then you had Republican states, those governors and legislatures, who didn't want to have Medicaid expansion. And so now what we're seeing right now, we're actually seeing our system being stripped butt naked and exposed for what it is. In a moment, I'm going to talk to Principal Steve Perry and what's happening on the education, because all the people who are saying, shut the schools down, homeschool them, or you can go online, but then you got I mean, South Carolina, they're actually converting 3,000 school buses into mobile Wi-Fi units because guess what? The kids don't have internet. And so you got all these people who are walking around, and I keep telling people, stop assuming because, you know, you're middle class and you've got Wi-Fi in your home and you've got cable and you're able to go to Costco because you got a Costco card. Well, guess what? You got to pay for a damn Costco card. There's a bunch of families who can't even pay for a Costco or a Sam's card, and these people are wondering like, oh, I don't understand what's going on. And so now you have, Bill, calls from people like Mark Cuban. I saw Ali Velsh's show, who was saying this is now, when you have a calamity, now you deal with your structural issues of inequality. And so from your vantage point, how do we do that? Because if you're now talking about dropping $1 and $2 and $5 trillion directly to Americans, how do we now confront what has been a fundamental problem in this country for decades?
Well, this is one of the big problems. The Senate just finally, this is Wednesday, they finally signed off on the House bill passed last week to make sure that we would have paid sick days. And this is common sense. The people who are serving you food, they're serving you food, and you don't want them to have a paid sick day. You'd rather have them come to work sick than have them stay home. This is the lunacy, but the Senate and the White House fought against paid sick days for all workers. They limited it so that it's only workers if your establishment has more than 50 workers or fewer than 500. So you left out somewhere between 6 and 19 million Americans who are working and still will not have paid sick leave.
But here's the thing, it's crazy, Bill. Okay, so you take, I mean, look, I have a small-owned business. That's what this is. I have 12 employees. So the problem is what you just described, we don't qualify for. And if you look at black-owned businesses, there are 2.6 million black-owned businesses in America. 2.5 million only have one employee. And then look at those 100,000 that have more than one employee. Most of them don't have, frankly, more than 10 employees. So when you start talking about how this impacts different sectors, I mean, these are people making decisions and you're not dealing with true small businesses in America.
Well, they aren't, except they write out exceptions. Their way of dealing with it is to say, well, we'll exclude you so you won't have to deal with that. But here's the reality. For those small businesses, if you're a restaurant owner and you don't retain your workers and they get let go, when we finally get a hold of the disease, maybe 9 months from now, everything we hope will be back to normal if we're doing the right steps now. Where are you going to find your workers? You let them go. The number one thing is to provide paid sick leave to paid leave for these workers so that they stay attached to their employer so that when things resume, the employer isn't going around saying, now I got to recruit a whole new workforce in order to get myself up and running. Right. This is for the business's protection as much as it is for the workers' protection.
Is this also time, Bill? Is this also time to also deal with the fact that you have a lot of these major companies? Again, I'm going to pull an Ali Velshi tweet up in a second where he said, where you have a lot of these CEOs who are making 220 times what an average worker is earning, and now all of a sudden, everybody, Bill, is lining up for a bailout. Airline industry. But Boeing wants a $60 billion bailout when, in fact, Boeing's problem really had to do with the 737 MAX. And so we know what that game is. Now, hotel industry. I was seeing a story where the hotel union said some 700,000 people who work for hotels could be out of jobs. Marriott instituting massive layoffs. I mean, we can go down the line. You got Sheldon Adelson, these casinos who want to bail out. I'm sorry, Sheldon Adelson, you're worth $31 billion. Bail your own ass out.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, in fairness, it's okay for them to get the bailout as long as, and number one, as long as it's to make sure that the employees stay employed, as long as the workers are getting a paycheck. This is the key issue. So in the airline case in 2001, because of 9/11 and the disruption to air traffic, we bailed out the airlines. What did they do? Many of them immediately went into bankruptcy, got rid of their union contracts, got rid of retirement. Workers got nothing. They didn't look out for the workers of the airline industry. And so the airlines are back again, and now they're asking for another bailout, no strings attached.
No, I'm sorry.
Again.
I'm sorry. No, this is where you have to have members of Congress with integrity who say this bill is not going to go forward unless you're protecting workers. If you're Nancy Pelosi, if you're Steny Hoyer, if you're Jim Clyburn, if you're any of them, I don't expect the Republicans to do any of this, but somebody has to say, no. We are not nope, not going to happen again. We're not going to bail these folks out who, again, are screwing the American people, and what they want to do is tide themselves over and, bank that money. I'm sorry, that dog ain't going to hunt.
Well, it shouldn't. And as you mentioned, retailers now want a bailout and fairness. Again, in the public interest, we've asked them, please don't open up. Please don't do that. Walmart is the biggest employer in the United States, well over 500 employees. They're the number one group in front of Congress saying, make sure that the paid sick days does not apply to us. These are billionaires, the richest people on the planet, the Walton family. And they're saying, no, we don't want legislation that gives paid sick leave to everybody. And in fact, they accuse Congress and the labor unions, oh, you're just using this emergency to get the paid sick days that you've always been arguing for. But we've been arguing for them because we went through H1N1 flu in 2009. We thought we learned our lesson. We didn't. So here we are again at the last minute trying to cobble together common sense policy approaches.
Bill Spriggs, we'll be talking to you a lot more over the next several weeks as we sort of sort this thing out, what is happening economically all across this country. Again, the actions Congress take will go a long way to fixing the system, and so we'll see what happens. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Let's hope that they do focus on workers, because the people who are being hurt are the low-wage workers that normally get ignored by everybody whenever there's economic policy.
All right, Bill Spriggs, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Folks, education is also a huge issue. You got parents who are now trying to figure out, some who are going into work, now others who are at home. What do you do with your kids when schools have shut down? Universities and high schools, middle schools, elementary schools are saying they're going to go to distance learning online. But what happens when you're at home and you don't have the internet? Joining us right now is Principal Steve Perry of Capital Prep. Steve, glad to have you here. I was reading this story, Dallas Independent School District. They were talking about this here. They said 40% of their students, we keep talking about food, which is obviously important, and things along those lines. They said 40% of our students don't have internet.
Well, that's interesting, because one of the things that's starting to happen is that, first of all, hello, Roland, long time no see. One of the things that's starting to happen throughout the country is some of the large internet providers, at least in the Northeast, I don't know about down south, are providing free internet for families during this time. Some of the online learning platforms are also doing the same thing, like Zoom is now free to educational services. So that's disappointing to hear that there is not a strategy in place in a place like Texas, where the internet providers like Comcast and Xfinity and others aren't providing. Because in New York and Connecticut, I know for sure.
Well, first of all, Comcast made a statement. which they actually posted, and I'll pull up in a second. But here's the deal, though. Again, if I don't have a router at home, I can't pick up the internet. And so, and what this is exposing, just like when it comes to on the economic side, what it is exposing are the gaps in the difference between, again, people who are middle class or upper middle class and people who don't. There are a lot of people who, if you're middle class, you go, it's like the whole deal with voter ID. You have these arrogant people, like, I don't understand, what's the problem? I mean, you have a driver's license. Well, guess what? Not everybody drives. And then a lot of people who don't need a driver's license because it's just not a requirement. And one person may think, well, this is just so basic, it's just so expected, like, why don't you have it? Not realizing somebody else's situation. To the point where we're saying, Henry, go to, actually, let me pull it up. Let me switch over here and pull up on this iPad over here. Comcast made this announcement a day ago. Henry, if you can pull up, you can. Today, we announced a comprehensive COVID-19 response to help keep Americans connected to the internet. offering free unlimited data, opening Xfinity Wi-Fi network nationally for free, waiving late fees, and helping low-income families get connected. What's happening though with a lot of schools, they're realizing not all kids have iPads, not all of them have computers, and so we're now seeing again this thing exposing the difference between the haves and the have-nots.
So who could disagree with that, right? But one of the things that is happening, Roland, is that many school systems are in fact allowing children to check out iPads or whatever the platform that they're going to be, whatever the mechanism they're going to use to use their online learning. So whether it be an iPad or a MacBook or Chromebook or whatever, they're allowing children to sign them out. And what is important about that is I think we have an opportunity that we've never had before in the American, not in our lifetime, in the American academic experience, to rethink the way in which we educate.
Right.
We actually now can begin to create schools of one like never before. We're very excited, believe it or not, Roland, about what we can do academically. However, there are real challenges. So on Tuesday, after school, there were helicopters flying above our school in Harlem because there's a bit of a war going on between a couple of communities. And because we're a charter school, we have children coming from various communities. And because we're in a densely populated area, there are kids coming from different communities coming to a central area. One of the young brothers who attends our school said, and this is before Corona was part of our decision-making process, he was concerned about summer. He said, the reason why I come to school early is because I need to get about this foolishness. We have real contextual challenges that are occurring that we're not thinking about. Our schools, in many cases, are the safest place for many of our children. Again, the kids I work with are in places like Bridgeport, Connecticut, and Hartford, Connecticut, and Harlem, and the Bronx. Communities that are struggling in many ways. And so our children are afraid to be home. So while we're excited about what we can do to teach them, and I wish I could show you some of the really cool things our faculty are putting together, I also have to keep in mind that what's happening in our community is a real thing. Our block was surrounded by police officers just because kids were getting into foolishness. It's not even summer yet.
Well, it is certainly, I think, for a lot of people, showing the gaps in our education system. Our income system is showing the gaps in employment, in healthcare, and in moments like this. And I would hope you have people who are not just focused on the short term, but realize that, hey, this is one of those opportunities that you can use to actually deal with some of the larger issues. I said this, same thing, if you read Ron Susskind's book, Confidence Man, talking about the economic team of President Barack Obama, he said that he actually had on his campaign team, he had an A team, but when he got to the White House, he chose the B team versus the A team. Here's an opportunity where we need our big thinkers to say, how can we deal with some of the structural issues when you have this sort of calamity? I'm not quite sure that they're going to be thinking that way, but I think we should be pushing them to think much bigger and broader. Steve Perry, always a pleasure, man, and keep handling your business.
Likewise, bro.
Want to go back to my panel here. Lauren Victoria Burke and then PA joins us. Folks, I mean, this is, I go back to what I was saying with Bill and with Steve. You cannot ignore these major things that are going on and how you do have a moment. You actually have a moment to actually deal with some structural stuff. If you got people who are thinking like that, or it's just send more money out and then it's gonna fix it.
Yeah, look, the thing is this, bailouts, you know, there's a level of moral hazard that comes with bailouts. Look, we saw that in 2000, 2008, 2007 to 2009 with the bank bailouts. I do think that, look, if the government comes out and, well, first and foremost, if there are going to be any bailouts, the first people who need to be bailed out are the American people, American taxpayers, you know, that keep everything afloat. Secondly, if you're going to come in and start bailing out industries, you know, look, if you're going to take the dollars, you know, and not necessarily with the gun to your head, the way Treasury did it in 2008, 2009 with some of these banks that didn't really need it. But if you're going to ask for a bailout and take the bailout, I do think that, hey, you know, the government has the right to add some strings attached to it. And I think Mark Cuban went down, you know, the proper path. I think, you know, look, some of these companies, their employees should be able to partake in the profit sharing. Their employees should be able to partake in the stock and buying stock of the company. I do think you have an opportunity to deal with some of the structural things here. But one, you have to have the will of government, and two, you have to have the will of the people.
Hey, I'd be satisfied if it's part of the bailout, because I do believe in giving it to the industries that are hurting, but that the employees who were in place when you laid them off, they come back, you get back to status quo, and then at some point, obviously, you're free to make whatever management decisions you want to make, but they have got to be there for some period of time so it doesn't look like you're going to fire them to take advantage of the bailout, minimally. Now, you can do a lot more with that, but minimally, that ought to be the case. Because if you look at the auto industry and some of the other industries that were bailed out under Barack Obama, they made them turn around. And the other thing is this. You could also make some of these loans whereby the industry or the industry participants would have to pay the government back.
Right.
And that's worked.
You can't, Lauren, bottom line is you cannot sit here and have a system where these companies are participating in changing these laws, having these carve-outs. I'm sorry, if you're going to line up for taxpayers to bail you out, to me, it better be some hardcore, stringent rules put in place. And this is real simple. If you don't want to abide by them, you're on your own.
Yeah, well, like what Eugene just said, I just got off of 95 coming from Richmond. I spent the day with Lieutenant Governor of Virginia. And the biggest thing that we get in terms of panic are three sectors, right? So small business owners, obviously, faith leaders, pastors, and parents of kids. And we know what that's about. Obviously, there are kids with them. It's really not an economic thing. It's just a child care thing, which is actually an economic thing. But at any rate, the panic is real, and it should be real because some of these business owners that we've been talking to are going out of business within 14 days.
Yes.
So Mark Cuban was right when he said that let's not be giving businesses this money so they just reinvest in their stock.
Right.
Okay. And what Eugene just said, and what the president is endorsing with this 2,000, I'm telling you right now. I mean, my major was in history, but I don't think you need to be an economist to figure out when people cannot pay their rent, when they cannot pay their mortgage, when we have a country whose average savings account is like $500 or $600. Okay, those margins cannot be withstood. They're too tight to go 2 and 3 months with no income.
Right.
That can't happen. And I hear
first of all, while you're talking, keep going. Henry, go to my iPad.
Justin just texted me and said
HUD, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac suspended foreclosures and evictions during this whole outbreak. Go ahead.
Right. Justin just texted and said New York is suspending debt collection.
Yeah.
Of some type. So that conversation has got to be accelerated very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, you've had, of course, when Trump made the announcement about student loan. No, when they said they suspended interest.
No, forget that. Right?
No, you got to stop. You got to suspend right now the payment of student loans.
And forget tax credits and all this nonsense dancing around the edges. I'm talking cash money, and it's good to see that the president is endorsing the 2,000. Person. That's the direction.
First of all, when Tom Cotton.
Right.
Or Romney.
Romney got Romney from Utah. No, Tom Cotton from broke-ass Arkansas.
Yeah.
When Tom Cotton stands up on the floor and goes,
pay it off.
No. We got to send money direct.
Right.
Because you're absolutely right. What is happening here? Look, this is how basic this whole thing is. 3 days ago, I hit my parents. Look, my parents are 72.
Right.
Okay? They live in my home in Texas. First thing is, do y'all need cash?
Right.
Because, see, the other thing is this here. What's happening is, right now, cash is king.
Yeah.
Right. Because the deal is, you now start dealing with credit. Now you start talking about credit cards, interest rates. People, all the folks who have been playing around with this whole deal, don't seem to understand. This is not some small deal. This is impacting every sector. And I'm telling you, Scott, I'm warning y'all right now, expect it. I believe we are 2 weeks away from what's going to be a mandatory shutdown. Because if they are unable, we got to be doing 1 million, 2 million, 3 million tests a week. Yeah. This whole deal of, hey, we're shipping out thousands. No. You got to be able, this is very basic math, 300 million Americans. If you do 10 million tests in the next month, He said 290 million. And the problem is this whole deal about show symptoms, but you got NBA players. Somebody need to explain to me how in the hell they got tested. Who got tested? And guys are like, I'm showing no symptoms.
Well, but it's
this thing is about
there's a couple need 10 million. It's going to be. You're right. You need 10 million, or you said 3 or 4 million.
No, I'm saying if you do 10 million in the next month, you still got 290 million Americans that ain't been tested.
But you're going to have more people, whether they're tested or not, who are going to become symptomatic, and so it's embarrassing. For example, here's the panel right here, right? Nobody's symptomatic for the coronavirus, right? Okay, so here's the number one question. If you wanted to be tested, because you could be asymptomatic, right?
Right.
Where would you go in the next 24 to 48 hours to get a corona test? Anybody on the panel?
Hold up. First of all, according to
I have no idea.
I know in Maryland.
According to the Surgeon General,
You're not supposed to go.
No. According to the Surgeon General, he said call your doctor.
I called my doctor.
Here's the problem with that.
My doctor said
you
I
have
don't want to
you have
test.
doctors who you have. There was a woman who was a doctor at MSNBC who said, I have a patient who is showing symptoms, couldn't get a test.
Booyah. Now what?
A patient showing symptoms, then it was kind of like, well, are the symptoms serious enough? What? Do you have to be gasping for breath? I mean, this is, and the thing is.
So what do you do with that patient, though, Roland? So what do you do?
Basically, what their deal is, self-quarantine and hope that shit go away.
Take some Tamiflu and sit tight.
Cuomo's scenario with the doubling of the people who, of course, have been diagnosed, which, of course, we don't know about the unknown, the untested, and his conversation that he's been having now for a week about the hospitals being overwhelmed.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
Is a real serious scenario that could actually happen, and the fact that he's talking about that and locking down and having a shelter in place in New York City, I still can't believe it's in New York that they shut down the bars.
Yeah.
And
he shut down the shelter in place last night.
Okay.
And the restaurants and bars shut down here in D.C. too.
The point is to get back to the sense of urgency. I know he has a really marked sense of urgency.
He does. Governor Inslee in Washington State.
Hogan in Maryland.
And actually, and now we know apparently what happened in Washington State. The reason that thing blew up because the CDC, with examination, they realized there were workers who were working at multiple old folks' homes.
Right.
And so the reason that thing hopped from place to place because the workers were actually moving from place to place.
But the sense of urgency that Hogan and Cuomo have, that has to be nationwide.
Right, but it has to be on a federal level, but you have somebody who's playing games with, and again, this is not picking on people who are young, but I was reading this story, I think it was in Wyoming. There are 3 cases.
Let's pick on
all 3 people who are under 30 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so CBS News went out and did some interviews down in Miami. Y'all want to see stupid?
I get corona. At the end of the day, I'm not going to let it stop me from partying. You know, we've been waiting for Miami spring break for a while. About 2 months we've had this trip planned. 2-3 months. So we're just out here having a good time. Whatever happens, happens.
Like, it's really messing up with my spring break. What is there to do here other than go to the bars or the beach, and they're closing all of it? It's really messing up. I think they're blowing it way out of proportion. I think it's doing way too much.
Doing us bad. We need a refund. This virus ain't that serious. It's serious. It's more serious things out there like hunger and poverty, and we need to address that.
Yeah, I mean, we planned this a long time ago, and it was kind of up in the air if we still go, but like we're here. I just turned 21 this year, so I'm here to party, so it's kind of disappointing, but we're just making the most of it. We met these other people in our little Airbnb spot, so we're just hanging out with them and trying to get drunk before everything closes.
I mean, it sucks, but we're gonna make the best of it. We're enjoying ourselves. It sucks, and I'm from New Orleans, so this really sucks. However, we're gonna enjoy ourselves. We having day parties all day. It's my birthday, St. Patrick's Day. Turn up.
We're just trying to roll with the boy. We're just living for the moment. We're just gonna do what happens when it happens. When stuff closes, we're gonna do it when it closes. But besides that, we're just trying to have the best trip we can.
Okay, y'all. You heard the one person say, we met some people in the Airbnb and we're just hanging together. You don't know where in the hell they came from. You don't know what they got. And all those people are going home.
Yeah.
Hey, no parole anywhere.
Not a parole anywhere. And they may have more situations than just coronavirus.
Party, man. We're just going to party until they shut it down. And look, and if it gets rough, it gets rough.
Go ahead.
But the thing is this, right? The thing is this. You got to get people tested. You know, I think those folks shouldn't be allowed. They shouldn't.
Where? Tell me where to go to get a test.
Well, look, I know where to go in Maryland, but I know. The governor. He's taking. Listen, we have a good, competent governor in Maryland.
Well, no, same thing. First of all, I would say Inslee in Washington State, Cuomo in New York, Hogan in Maryland, the woman who was in Michigan. Governors across the country are stepping up, but this still goes back to
a federal response.
Go back to leadership. Here's the videos that folks put together. Again, just so you understand the response of Trump from one point to the other. Then you got the folks at Fox News, which is a whole different world. Y'all go ahead and play this video. Play this video showing you, again, the disparity in the responses.
This is yet another attempt to impeach the president. And sadly, it seems they care very little for any of the destruction they are leaving in their wake. We must test for the virus in order to stop the spread of it. What could be a very great recession. Some predicting even a depression.
At worst case scenario, it could be the flu.
I feel like the more I learn about this, the less there is to worry about.
I was about to say the same thing. We don't have immunity to this virus. It's a new virus. It's a pandemic strain of a virus we haven't seen before.
All the talk about coronavirus being so much more deadly doesn't reflect reality. Without a vaccine, the flu would be far more deadly. We are facing an incredibly contagious and dangerous virus that is moving across the world from one hotspot to another.
We're going to call out anyone and everyone who's using this virus as a political weapon against the president. The standard flu every single year kills tens of thousands of Americans. We are now entering what will be the crucial defining 15-day period as it relates to this virus, where we must slow the spread of coronavirus.
It's actually the safest time to fly. Everyone I know that's flying right now, terminals are pretty much dead. We have a responsibility to slow down this virus and to think of other people during this time. And so if you can keep your distance and prevent someone from getting close to you that might be sick, you could save your family, you can save the elderly, and help our country as a nation.
It is absolutely disgusting that Democrats are seeking to use this complex virus to score cheap political points. This dangerous health crisis could dovetail quickly into a political crisis, already feeling economic ramifications of it all.
Here's what I think would happen. I think Suzanne Scott, the CEO of Fox News, had a meeting and say, dumbasses, our audience, they're the ones who are most vulnerable. Take this seriously. That's what I think what you're seeing. When we talk about taking it seriously as well, we finally, again, I told you a day after the New York Times dropped the story, all of a sudden the Secretary of Defense comes out of hiding. Secretary of Veteran Affairs comes out of hiding, and then they came to the podium today. I'm just saying, you finally figured out they work for the administration, Donald Trump. Watch this. You guys
DOD's coronavirus efforts as we continue to focus on our three priorities. That's, first of all, protecting our personnel and their families. Second, safeguarding our national security mission capabilities. And third, of course, supporting the administration's whole-of-government approach. First of all, though, I do want to assure the American people that the United States military remains ready and capable of defending the country and our interests abroad. Now, with that, the Department is leaning forward in our response to COVID-19. We have issued international and domestic travel restrictions to all DoD personnel and families that should dramatically reduce potential exposure to the virus. Those have been in place for some time now. As I announced yesterday, the Department of Defense will make available up to 5 million N95 respirator masks and other personal protective equipment from our own strategic reserves to the Department of Health and Human Services for distribution. The first 1 million masks will be available immediately. We are also prepared to distribute to HHS up to 2,000 operational deployable ventilators for use as needed. Yesterday, I was at Fort Detrick, Maryland, which is probably the military's premier research institute, where I got updated on the incredible work our people are doing as part of the interagency team to work on vaccines and therapeutics. They are making great progress there. We also have announced that we've certified our 16th lab, or will soon certify our 16th lab to help with processing tests from across the country. Additionally, I have directed, as the President mentioned, that the hospital ships Mercy and Comfort be prepared to deploy to increase the nation's medical capacity. And we have also alerted a variety of field and expeditionary hospitals to be prepared to deploy as well as needed, based on direction from the Commander-in-Chief. Today, leadership from the Army Corps of Engineers is in New York, meeting with Governor Cuomo and his team I spoke with Governor Cuomo yesterday and other governors. I will be speaking to more in the coming days to make sure that they know what DoD can provide through our system to address their needs. In my conversations with governors and members of Congress about DoD's resources, I've made it clear that we will continue to support the administration's comprehensive efforts and the country every step of the way while ensuring our nation's security remains the top priority. I want to conclude by thanking again all of our service members and their families who have been affected by this outbreak. They are all great heroes. We are continuing to support them throughout this. We are all in this together. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, folks, very few African Americans serving in the military have ever had 4 stars on their shoulders. My next guest, he is one of them. He was the first leader of AFRICOM, that command when it was started under President George H.W. Bush. General Kip Ward joins us right now. General, glad to have you here. You heard the Secretary of Defense there. General, look, you've had to deal with these issues, being over AFRICOM, dealing with the issues with Ebola and other issues happening all across the globe. Explain to the audience really being in the room, how the military operates when something like this here. This is a national security issue as well. You know, how do you mobilize? We heard that in the military, look, that they've canceled all domestic international flight, allowing people to stay where they are. So give us a sense of how the military is operating and thinking right now.
Good evening, Roland, and thanks for inviting me to participate this evening. A couple of dimensions that we want to consider here. First of all, you know, the military, as the Department of Defense and all of its entities, has this primary mission, obviously, of safeguarding our nation's security, both at home and abroad, in varying ways. As a brigade commander, for instance, I deployed my brigade to Florida for Operation Hurricane Andrew relief because our citizens at home needed the support that we, the military, could provide. The second, and I'll go back into more of that in a bit, and the second dimension is that as a citizen, we too are subjected to the same sorts of things that every American citizen is subjected to, be it at home or abroad. And so doing the things that are prudent measures that every citizen would do, that is also a part of this dynamic. So when you look at the specifics of the reaction, the activity being undertaken by the military, candidly at this point, my understanding is that you have as well. I'm not deeply involved in this at this time, but understanding the processes from the standpoint of what you do to protect the force. And those are the things that are common things that are being done by every American citizen that candidly are our first line of defense when it comes to protecting ourselves from COVID-19, this spread of this virus. And then secondly, the things that can be done by the military as an institution of our federal government that will support the efforts of our other agencies, local, state governments, with respect to being able to respond, address contingencies as they arise. And in this particular situation, we're learning things every day, and then being able to present these sorts of contingencies, alternatives to the decision maker such that those resources can be brought to bear if needed, where needed, and in a timely way.
When we hear people say the military should be dispatched, National Guard should be dispatched, if that's the case, how are they used? Used to do what?
The dispatch of the National Guard, obviously, in our system, those forces belong to state governors. And as you indicated, and I've heard, many of the state governors are in fact dispatching and using those National Guard forces to do a multitude of things. It could be assisting the state and local authorities to do things such as distribution of food, other material that help to abate the crisis. They could be used to help transport, provide logistics. It's basically in logistics support, and in some cases, potentially to provide a security umbrella for the conduct of other activities under the direction of the state and local officials when it comes to the National Guard. And at this point in time, it is the National Guard who is under the jurisdiction of the governors and the territorial entities to provide that type of support. And it's wholly appropriate that governors take their National Guard outfits and provide that type of logistical support in order to support the activities of their state and local entities.
We heard them talking about the Defense Production Act and then what that does to free up. Can you explain again for the audience who doesn't know anything about the Defense Production Act, what that even does?
Essentially, in a national emergency, those industry activities that produce commodities that are important in addressing a particular situation can be directed by the president to then develop as well as to produce those items of equipment that are important to addressing the national scenario. And so in this case, those private entities that make various things that are important in addressing this situation because of the invocation of the Defense Production Act, those institutions and those jobs, those particular agencies, those corporations devote their resources to producing products that particularly designed to address this situation. And that is done under the auspices of the Defense Production Act.
Hey, General Ward, this is A. Scott Bolden. Good seeing you again. I hope you're doing well. My question has to do with what we're not seeing. In your opinion, what aren't we doing? What aren't we seeing? What aren't we moving forward as the federal government addresses this coronavirus? For example, I raised earlier in the show the Army Corps of Engineers could be brought in to lead to set up hospitals. They build bridges. They do all kinds of incredible things all over the world, and yet we don't see them in some leadership role. We don't see FEMA in some leadership role. I know you've got some experience with working with FEMA. And so what aren't we doing, and why aren't those agencies leading, or why aren't we hearing about them?
Yeah. Hi. Hello there, Scott. And two things that we need to understand about that process. One, in our federal system of government, and regardless of how we may think about it, and having been a part of many forms of government, this one is the one that I would certainly want to be living under, where when you get to the type of disaster situation that exists, and this is clearly a global disaster situation and is impacting our country, but the state, local authorities put the demand on the table. You don't see generals like I was marching into an area and saying, this is what I'm going to do, move aside. Now, there may be times when someone might want to see that, but again, that happens in places where I've been, and certainly you have as well, and that's not how our system of government is established. And so unless a lot of other things change, that piece of it is the way it is, and candidly, I'm okay with that. Secondly, when it comes to what's not being seen, I mentioned the fact of contingencies. You know, the United States military, we plan for the unknown, not because we know the specifics, but when it comes to providing support, a range of contingency actions that can be taken, from moving logistics and supplies to safeguarding facilities to providing stocks that may exist in the stocks of the Department of Defense that could be then used in that civilian contingency, from airlift to other sorts of things, are appropriate. The response is contingent upon the examination of the specific activity at the time, as opposed to doing things, and to use a term that I use when I served AFRICOM, you want to add value and at a minimum do no harm. And so as you add value, that value must be from an informed position, and that information is derived from how you understand what you're getting from state and local entities, and then once that's understood, you respond in kind as best as possible when it comes to moving forward and supplying with either logistics, augmentation of personnel, some organizational activities. And so the various entities, be it the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which is basically a civilian entity. It's basically a civilian entity that comes together. It doesn't exist in one glob. It comes together as pieces may be needed from the contractor support that's available. You have certainly a professional corps that's there that operates day in and day out, but when it comes to standing up and bringing things together, be it out of our National Guard and Reserve, mobilizing these activities is what goes on. The plans that exist to do that are plans that are contingency plans based on a range of scenarios that can be tailored to the specific situation at hand.
General Ward, it's Lauren Burke. How are you? During your time in the Army, there's a lot of rumors right now about quarantining people. I don't know whether they're true or not. It might be the Russians playing around with us. But when you were in the Army, you ever hear of a plan that sounded like it could actually happen where Americans would be quarantined someplace for any reason, whether it was disease or anything else?
Well, certainly quarantine is a term that we all are aware of. There is, from the standpoint of my specific understanding, a quarantine for the sake of quarantine isn't something that was done. You have a circumstance or a situation where to safeguard, to prevent, that certainly is there. But no, I've not been apprised of any specific situation whereby you quarantine for the sake of quarantine, other than some existential situation that exists that makes quarantine a very valid course of action to be taken, as would be potentially the case here. And as right now, in a sense, we are there. I mean, I'm here now, I will, quote unquote, grounded, because I'm taking the advice of those who say it's best to stay put and prevent the spread of this thing. And when you see folks who don't do that voluntarily, well, it's kind of like what President Kennedy said many, many years ago, ask what you can do for your country. What every individual American citizen can do to help combat this is to interact as little as possible, because the more you interact, the greater potential is for this thing to spread in ways that we still don't understand candidly. And the greatest prevention to that is to stay put so that you don't risk the spread of this disease. And in today's global environment, it's even more a potential if the mixing, the interaction is such that it just enhances the potential for that happening. And so quarantine, if the situation demands it and requires it for many reasons, would be an appropriate course of action, given all other options and alternatives having been tried, tested, or deemed to be would not work.
Hi, General Gene Craig here. Question. So we have an absence of leadership right now. And so my question to you is, being someone that oversaw AFRICOM and, has a thorough understanding of, what disaster response looks like on multiple different levels and different scales, if you were president, who would be the one person that you would, appoint essentially as the point person to handle this response, to bring all the levers of government together, local, state, federal, and how would you empower them? Because I think that's what we need right now. I mean, a lot of the governors are stepping up, but the federal response just isn't clicking right now.
Yeah, well, I don't think I could answer that, because I probably don't have all the information that would be important to make that determination. Again, we live in a federal system of government, and that federal system of government that I swore for 40 years to obey and respect, and I still do. Nothing has changed about that. And unless we're to throw a lot of other things, then we have to ensure that what we do in our federal system of government works. And in these cases, and it is truly a national scenario, but our state, local authorities that are backdropped and supported by our federal response capabilities and resources are where we ought to be, and collaborating and cooperating and discussing so that things are known, facts are known as best as we can, because there is no 100% guarantee of any day. These things are changing daily. And one of the, I guess I'll call it one of our axioms that we use in the military, no plan survives once you cross the line of departure. So what we were thinking last week is different than what's happening today, and will be different than what goes on tomorrow. And so to be wedded to a particular thing because it was what it was a week ago is candidly reduces your ability to respond. You respond to the scenario as it changes, doing your very best to be out in front of it and doing those proactive things as best as you can determine will support where you are and where you want to go. And so for me, who that person might be, again, not in a position to say. The involvement of the team is important, and listening to what the team brings to the table from the varying perspectives to make a decision is where we are, and I'd probably be on the same side of moving forward.
General, I do have to ask you this here: speed matters. Look, you serve in the military. You know what happens when people wait. You know what happens on the battlefield when folks say, well, no, let's do this 48 hours from now as opposed to do it now. It sort of sometimes it works both ways. You got to have enough time to get your troops prepared, have your logistics in place, your supply lines to be able to execute something. But when you look at something along those like this here, when you look at a video, and guys, go ahead and play that video again. This was February 12th of this year. And there was a coronavirus hearing in the Department of Homeland Security. And Senator Kamala Harris put this video on her Twitter feed on February 12th, 2020. I want you to listen to this, and we'll talk about today being almost a month later. Guys, go ahead and play that.
The American people also, Mr. Chairman, need to hear from the officials who are currently responsible for addressing this. And we need a public hearing with current government officials as soon as possible. It is critical to my state of California. I have spoken with some of the current officials and asked them why they are not here today, and they did not have a good response for why they are not. In fact, they went on to say, well, we have to take time to prepare talking points. The American people deserve them to be here this morning.
I'm not asking you to critique this administration. If you choose to do so, you will. But when you think back to that, February 12th, 2020, when you look at the comments where Trump was like, we got to contain, it's under control, I'm not really worried about it. Here we are, more than a month later, we still aren't even testing, 1,000 people a day. There are things that are happening more than a month later that should have been really in place a month ago. Can you speak to, when time is of the essence, how every day delayed makes this situation even worse?
Yeah, Roland, and I appreciate that. The essentials of time are clearly important with respect to what you do, when you do it, and how you do it, and all based on, predicated upon the information available at hand at the time. We have a requirement to take your best information you have, and based on that information, take decisions and actions that are reflective of your understanding at that particular point in time, given who has the ability to certainly bring resources to bear. Unfortunately for me, I don't know what was going on February 12th, other than what I certainly recall from the news media as well. So I can't address and say what should have been done or not done at that point in time because I'm not aware of the information. I will tell you this. As a commander, there were times when I made a decision very, very quickly that I said, wow, I should have maybe waited 3 or 4 days because I had some information that I didn't have at the time. And there were times when information that I didn't have, but I just felt I needed to make a decision. I made that as well. And it turned out to be a good decision at the time. But there have been other times also that the decision was made and said, it would have been a better decision had I waited. So it's not the type of scenario that you can say absolutely what should have been the case or not case, not having this thing called facts bearing on the situation. And you need to take advantage of those to the very best you can. And that's what we tried to do. And I would imagine and guess that that's what the leaders have tried to do. I'm not sure. I don't know. I wasn't there, not privy to that. But I'm certain that from the standpoint of the military point of view and perspective, you have military, especially here in the Homeland Defense arena, the Northern Command, that they were doing those sorts of things based on information at time and preparing themselves, looking at the contingencies, determining what might be available, should be called upon, and then preparing to offer that up as soon as it was requested by the National Command Authority or by the states.
All right. Retired General Kit Ward, we surely appreciate you joining us, giving us that analysis. I keep saying this. It's important for us that we see African Americans who are doctors or who are experts in pandemics, but also in the military out here, because unfortunately in mainstream media, you swear when it comes to black generals, only one exists is Colin Powell. So always glad to have your voice, and we appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.
Proud to serve.
All right, thanks, sir. Tell your wife hello. All right, folks, we were talking about, first of all, this came in while we were interviewing General. Go to my iPad, please. Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, a Republican out of Florida, has tested positive for coronavirus, becoming the first U.S. lawmaker to contract the virus as spreading throughout the United States. Remember, a number of folks were down there gathered at Mar-a-Lago, where different people tested positive. The mayor of Miami and so many others. Matter of fact, the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee, y'all noticed that they announced that she was being quarantined, but there's been no word about the testing because the White House complained that they complained that she went public with having symptoms. And again, that to me speaks to a White House that's unwilling to deal with reality and just wants people just to shut up and be quiet. Also, while we were sitting here talking, I got this tweet here, and I got to go ahead and talk about this here because I think it speaks to the problem that I think we have. So, you know, you heard the people who've been quite critical of these stock buybacks in these companies. Well, this person, Lee Fang, just put this tweet out, and I had to pull it up, and it says, holy shit, Boeing spent $43 billion on stock buybacks, helping more than double its stock price in 2017, 2018, enriching shareholders, only to melt down from its mass-produced faulty planes and the current coronavirus crisis. Now they need a bailout, and you see they have the story there from nakedcapitalism.com. But here's the thing. They want a $60 billion bailout. Mark Cuban was right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mark Cuban was
all
really
these companies who spent billions, the $1 trillion they were able to bank from the Trump tax cut. What do these companies do? And the thing is, we kept saying Trump was lying. Oh, they're going to use his money and put it back into the companies and the workers. And the CEOs were literally on panels saying, no, we're not. We're going to do stock buyback.
And that's the trickle-down nonsense that we've heard for years. I'll give Trump a little credit at this moment, though. He's headed in the right direction with the 2,000. Hopefully nobody, 2,000 per person, nobody will get in the way and stop him. But the same thing happened when we did the bailout in 2008. We gave a bunch of money to bankers, right? And what did that get us? Pretty much absolutely nothing. My view was, let them jump out the window like we did with the...
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Hey, Boeing, you're a plane maker. Guess what? Your financial problems are because of your Russian, the 737 MAX.
Exactly.
That's the deal. And I'm sorry, Boeing does not...
100,000 employees.
That's not
what
the bigger
happens
issue.
to
The bigger
the
issue
100,000 employees around the world?
Is Boeing's... The bigger thing about Boeing is this.
Which is why the CEO got forced out, and it's a new CEO.
Yes, but we know Boeing as a plane manufacturer that pretty much supplies, most of the American airlines. The government
other governments, other countries around the world, too.
The government knows Boeing as one of their top defense contractors, and also the producer of most of the things that NASA needs to continue their operations. So that's why they're asking for a bailout. But I agree, these companies, they should have done what Apple's done over the year. They should have done with a lot of our strong top 20 companies in the country. They held their cash for a rainy day like this.
Scott,
Boeing. 2 years ago,
Scott,
3 years ago, this is the business show. But 3 years ago, everybody was asking.
No.
3 years ago, everybody was asking what Apple's going to do with the $100 billion cannon they had. They waited for a situation like this. And Google. Everybody say,
what as a Republican?
What do you mean? I don't believe in bailouts. Let me tell you something. I believe in moral hazard, all right?
It's a stronger company.
Wait, hold on.
Stronger shareholders.
I believe in moral hazard. But if we're going to bail out, it needs to start. If we're going to bail out anybody, it needs to start with the American taxpayer. Listen, me being a Republican. Hold on. Wait. Me being
Eugene and Scott.
You let him talk all the time.
Just be quiet. Go.
Me being a Republican is me believing in conscious capitalism. A big part of that conscious capitalism is companies doing the right thing first for their shareholders. You know what the best thing these companies should have did for their shareholders? Is make sure their balance sheets were healthy. Make sure their balance sheets provided long-term growth and long-term stability. Running through stock buybacks. Yes, it does. Yes, it allows for temporary growth. It allows for temporary stock.
No, it doesn't.
It allows
That's
for
a lie, Scott. You know
earnings
it.
per share because there are less shares. It allows for one thing and one thing only: higher earnings per share because there are less shares. There are less shares and earnings being distributed upon.
It's
not. Scott, listen. I respect you as a lawyer. You're totally lost here. You're totally lost here.
Sustained.
Listen.
Sustained.
If I'm building a stronger company, if
You
my
want a strong
P&L is
balance sheet.
stronger, right?
You want a strong cash position. You want to have enough cash.
Finish.
It has a better work environment. It helps the employees. It gives them expertise and training, and all of the strength of that P&L doesn't exactly go all to the shareholders, but there's more money reinvested. You may not like the percentage of what's being reinvested, but overall, it helps the strength of that company, and we need a strong bond.
Wait, finish.
And so if they do it through buyback, you don't like it, then tell them that they can't do it.
They did none of that.
Scott,
I said, listen,
even
if you
Donald
don't
Trump
want
has
that,
figured
stop
out that
yelling.
you're wrong.
Okay?
You're
Well, I'm not wrong. We just disagree.
No,
We don't disagree.
Hold up, you've been down that
You know,
path. Hold up, you've been down that path with me. You're wrong.
Wait.
You are wrong as hell.
You know what would allow for all of those things to take place? You know what would allow
you all just don't like because shareholders make money.
You know,
the company makes money.
You know what would allow for every
Stop.
Hundreds of thousands of employees. I'm done.
What would
I'm
what
done.
would allow for all those things we're going to talk about, like actually developing your workforce, giving you increasing salaries? A strong cash position. A strong cash position on your balance sheet.
Country.
The ability, if your debt is called in tomorrow, you can just pay it off.
Stock and
the ability to do M&A deals because you have cash on your balance sheet.
Stock.
Cash on the balance sheet. Cash on the balance sheet.
I got you. I got all that.
The problem with what you're saying, and I'm hearing you, Scott, but the problem with what you're saying is the dollar stores, the Kmarts, the Targets, these people who pay, we're doing minimum wage, we're making all this money for the top 1%. What Bernie
That's all
Sanders
they can afford.
Yeah, okay. What Bernie Sanders says is right about that. That's the thing. That's the inescapable
we should be paying them
fact.
More,
okay.
And that employees
will
never be rich working for Target.
No, that the very small percentage of people on the top make the most money, and then there's this big group at the bottom.
They started the company.
Oh, they take all the risk.
Hold on.
I can't disagree there.
Have a job.
First of all, this is real simple.
If you want a better job,
First of all,
But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about buybacks here.
Wait. This is real simple.
Get a better job.
No, this is real simple. Wait a minute. This is real simple.
You could have had a VA.
No, this is real simple. Boeing, I'm talking now. I'm talking. This is real simple. Boeing. This is real simple. I got this. I'm talking. If you're Boeing, if you want a $60 billion bailout, this is what we're going to do. We're going to give you a $60 billion loan.
Okay.
And we want our money back. No.
No interest rate.
No, the federal government. No, hell no.
No interest.
No, you're going to pay an interest rate. You're going to pay interest rate.
Because we can't afford
Let me say it right now. The cruise industry, Boeing.
Oh, they need help too.
Casinos, all of you. If you want taxpayers to bail you out, there's going to be a list of stringent restrictions that you got to abide by, and you're going to pay it back. I'm sorry. It is nonsensical for those companies that took that money to do stock buybacks. You're Sheldon Adelson, and you're worth $31 billion. Yeah.
That's misleading.
No, it's not.
Mr. Martin, you don't understand.
No, it's not. This is real simple. This is real simple. We are not going to go down another path where we're going to bolster their bottom lines and do what the banks did. They said they had toxic assets. And those same banks, what did they do? Took the bailout, shored up their bottom line, held on to those toxic assets. Yep. When the home market improved, then sold those toxic assets in bundles of 25 and 50,000 block homes to private equity. And then made Americans then become renters as opposed to homeowners. No. The only way this works, first of all, not only they survive, they thrive.
Half of them merged.
And the homeowners are renters, not owners.
He couldn't afford to be an owner.
The people Scott, are paying into those companies. See, the idea that you give the 2,000, and the moral hazard argument's not a terrible one, but when they get the 2K or the 1K or whatever it is, they pay into the companies that you're talking about to become profitable. What's wrong with that?
Well, because
my thing is this.
That way it's not enough.
The companies were negligent.
When you take the bailout.
That's what this comes down to.
Power the shareholders.
Companies were negligent.
You took all your cash.
Companies were negligent. What you have right now are a bunch of companies that made bad decisions. You have a bunch of dick holes running around right now. You got a bunch of job my Mac
these
running
big
around right now.
companies have to
You
do
got a
with
bunch of, you have a
coronavirus?
bunch of
They
CEOs.
didn't trigger
You
the
got a bunch of
coronavirus.
CEOs
So
that
now they're
made bad
responsible for the
decisions.
coronavirus?
You have a bunch
They're
of
responsible
you
for the
have a-
coronavirus?
Let me say, you have
The only way
you
you
have a
hammer
bunch
them
of.
is that
Listen,
they're
I know a lot of these folks are your
responsible
clients,
for it.
but the thing is that you have a lot of folks that you have a lot of folks that wanted to pretend to be Eric Schmidt and Tim Cook. And are just
Well, they can start their own companies and take all the
listen,
risk.
as somebody that
You don't
started,
wanna
as somebody
start
that
your own
is a small
company,
business
you're not
owner,
gonna
I
make as much as
understand
they
it.
got.
But the thing is this. When you
What are you so mad
when you are,
about?
I'm not mad.
What's wrong with wealth?
I'm not
and
mad. I believe in
entrepreneurship
wealth.
and
I believe in
taking chances,
listen.
right?
You know what
So
develops
you don't
wealth?
take the chance.
Good
You
balance
make the
sheets.
big money.
Wait, if you
Go for it.
If you believe in entrepreneurship, then
I do.
the money should go to
I
small
do.
business.
This real simple.
Go to your shareholders.
This real simple. Hey, y'all. First of all, First of all, hold on. We got.
What about you people?
Hold up, got it. Hold up.
What do you mean, you people?
Okay, stop. First of all, let me be real clear. Stop talking,
I'm
Kappa.
Republican.
Kappa, stop talking. You'll get over it. You'll get over it. All right. Hold up. I got it. Hold up. No, we're done with the topic. We're done.
I think she wants to talk.
We're done. No, we're done with this topic. What we're talking about is when the hell is Bernie Sanders going to get out of the race? Last night, of course, we told you what happened on Tuesday night, where here in Florida, in Illinois, we can go down the line, how Joe Biden did. Let me tell you, there's something that's so cold. I didn't even realize this.
Well.
Somebody did this here, and there's some fool, of course, who also follows me, who's like, you've been sold out for Biden, which is funny because I haven't endorsed anybody at all. But I saw a tweet from David Axelrod that I thought to be quite interesting. And he said that of the 9 states that Biden has won, here it is. Let me take a picture of it. Hold up.
Wrote to us for this.
He said, yeah. Actually, I interrupted you for it because, frankly, you were saying the exact same thing over and over and over again. No. First of all, we already covered it because
I represent big businesses.
Also, I understand that Scott is playing y'all and does bullshitting, and y'all are falling for the okie doke. So yes, he is. He is. Y'all are falling for it.
Always on it.
Anyway, you damn right. I know exactly what the hell it was. So it's like, he went down that rabbit hole and you chased it. And that's why I was sitting there. No, both y'all chased it.
Yeah?
Like I said, and you still chasing it. Right now you chasing it. That's why he laughing. That's why he laughing. So David Axelrod tweeted this out. He said, amazing stat from a smart Florida political hand. In Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Mississippi, Missouri, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia, Joe Biden won all but 10 counties. That's 9 states.
Yep.
All right, that's not a blowout. That's like a straight ass whooping.
That's a Thanos snap.
Now, this is real simple. Bernie Sanders has, first of all, Axios reported he was suspending his campaign. Y'all, can y'all stop falling for Axios? Okay, if Axios reports anything, don't believe it. Okay, just straight up, don't until somebody else confirms it. But here's the deal. Here's the deal. Can Senator look? It's clear. First of all, also, Scott, at this point, Biden has more delegates ahead of Sanders than Obama had at this point against Hillary Clinton. Doesn't make sense to Senator Sanders to continue running after the shellacking that he keeps getting in these states, losing by 20, 30, 40 points to Joe Biden.
It's an abject rejection, and so it makes no sense for him to continue. He needs to fall in. But this is his second run. I don't see the path forward. If you had Bernie Sanders on the show, if I were you, I'd ask him one question over and over again. What is the path forward to winning? And if you don't have a substantial path forward to winning, then you need to do like the other Democratic candidates, support Biden, unify the party, and let's go beat Trump. And I'd be interested in what his response would be, or any from his campaign, because right now, this isn't getting better. Other than the primaries being delayed, it's not getting better. And his message is the same, and it's soundly being rejected for results as opposed to a revolution.
Lauren, Amy Klobuchar and Pete
You disagree with
excuse me, hold on a second. Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg dropped out after South Carolina because when they looked at the map, they saw literally ass whoopings being prepared. And in politics, 2 things happen. You can stay in and keep getting blown out, or you could actually pull out, maintain whatever leverage that you might have. when you look at these numbers, when you look at what happened in Illinois, what happened in Florida, he lost Washington State. When you look at, I go down the line, why do you stay in? Because do you have a path forward?
Why do you stay in is because we're running a primary season. They're running for president. They're competing against each other. We would have said this about Joe Biden if we used the same logic of, oh, my God, he might lose.
Biden would have got out.
Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar never had a chance of winning.
Okay,
period.
First of all, no.
Never
First of all, you missed what I just said.
No,
what,
I didn't.
No, you did. What I just said is,
Okay.
after South Carolina, they saw the gauntlet coming forward. They saw how bad they did among black voters. When you look at the election results that even took place last night, and then go to last Tuesday, and then you look at what happened, again, losing by 40-plus points in Florida, losing by double digits in Illinois, and then we can go on, losing in Michigan, a state he beat Hillary Clinton in. What is the path forward for Senator Bernie Sanders?
In 2008, Barack Obama ran. He ran a very smart campaign with regards to the delegate count, and it came to sort of the end. We didn't know what was going to happen. I'm not saying that we don't know what's going to happen now. It looks like Biden is going to win. But if we look at the delegate count, it's 1,133 for Biden and 833 for Sanders. It's not that close, but it's not a complete blowout.
Actually, I said, hold on. Biden has a larger delegate lead today than Obama had against Hillary.
Great, fantastic. The guy is running for president.
I know he's running for president.
With everybody, he's running for president, and he has the right to run to the end. If it's okay with
everybody. Here's the whole deal.
He doesn't have a right to stay in.
First of all, everybody has the right. Hold up. Everybody has the right. Hold up. Bloomberg.
Is he going to drop?
No. First of all,
you can't win.
Okay, hold up. Stop. Hold on. So first of all, I don't know what. That's always the conversation. It hasn't always. First of all, it hasn't always been the conversation here.
This has been the conversation forever with Bernie Sanders.
No. With who? With who?
Why is he?
With who?
Why is he this?
No. With who? With who?
In general.
No. I don't do general. I do this show. And so what I don't do.
What are you asking right now?
No, what I'm asking right now is a very basic question.
You're asking when is he going
No, I'm not. No, that's not. No, what I'm asking is if you have been blown out in multiple states.
10 counties.
Okay, I'm reading in 9 states, you only win 10 counties. Okay, that means that you're getting embarrassed every week. The question I asked is, I'll ask you, Eugene.
The question is,
I'm asking Eugene.
When is he dropping?
I'm asking Eugene.
You didn't let her finish.
First of all, she did answer. She's finished. Okay. I'm asking Eugene. Do you reach a point, Eugene, where if you keep getting blown out, you actually are losing leverage, or do you drop out, realizing the path is getting smaller?
So the thing is this. I think we have a situation here where Bernie's kind of drunk on his own celebrity right now, all right? He's drunk on his own celebrity. He doesn't have a pathway forward, but his folk around him, the team around him, Talcum X and crew, they're trying to figure out, what is their next step, right? What is their next step? They're lost right now. They're 3 weeks without a primary. Biden's delegate count is insurmountable. I mean, because of the way the system is.
What's your point, though?
My point.
Excuse me, he's talking. Go.
My point is that because I
want to finish your point.
I went through this as a Ron Paul supporter against Mitt Romney in 2012.
Right.
Bernie has a right to stay in until the end, but. As a former party official, the party has a right to form around Joe Biden as a presumptive nominee and move forward without him and pick him up along the way. But Bernie doesn't have a pathway forward, but he does have a right to stick in and stick it through.
He loses his power and leverage the longer he stays in. Because what's he going to do with those delegates?
What is his power?
He waits to the end to get to the DNC.
Well, his power.
He will be powerless because there will be a brokered
1 second.
convention.
Scott is talking. I shut him up when y'all were talking. Finish your point.
Got too many opinions over there.
Finish your point. Go.
He loses his leverage if he holds on and stays in the race into the DNC. Right now, he can get out, use his delegates, and negotiate for something of value for himself, his state, or whatever, basically. Every day he stays in and doesn't unify behind Biden to go after Trump, right? He's becoming powerless or less powerful.
The question I'm going to raise is here because, again, here's the deal. When you said Bernie has a right to stay in, every candidate could. Warren could have stayed in. Bloomberg could have stayed in. Buttigieg could have stayed in. Klobuchar could have stayed in.
Kamala.
Harris could have stayed in. Booker, Castro. I can go down the line. Hell, Delaney, Bennett, all of them. But all of them came to a point where they said, all right, let me look at this whole deal here and say, me staying in, what does it actually get me?
Yeah.
If you're Sanders, and if you're looking at the map forward, and you're in this to win it, what are you looking at? What can you win in 2 states that were just flat out, Michigan and Washington State, you won 4 years ago, you couldn't even win this year.
Yeah, that's
After watching Hillary Clinton and that bullshit that we saw with Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the DNC of, oh, it's just got to be her, it's just got to be her. I think competition is fine. I think people
I didn't say
having debates
competition is fine as well, but there's a difference between competition and getting blown out. It's like the Harlem. Do you actually go to a Harlem Globetrotters game and think the Washington Generals are going to actually win the game?
This is politics. This ain't basketball. This is politics. He
Same
gets to say,
difference. Oh, it's a sport.
Bernie Sanders might not like him, whatever.
Wait, hold on. You're the same person who just sat there and said Klobuchar and Buttigieg had no shot. Show me Bernie's shot.
Hands.
Are you done?
No. You said they had no shot. Show me Bernie's shot. What's the shot? No.
Are you done talking?
No. You said. Hold up, Lauren. You said Buttigieg and Klobuchar had no shot.
And you're still getting over that comment.
I'm asking you.
Over that.
Show me where Sanders shot.
Moments later.
No, where Sanders shot.
The point is, Bernie Sanders being in the race, I know it shakes everybody up. I know it bothers.
No, it doesn't. You keep going. Everybody losing.
I know. No, everybody is the.
Who's everybody?
Class. The chattering class has been saying this for years about
chattering class.
For
Lauren,
years about
we're
Sanders.
not. Lauren, there are 4 people here.
Why is
we are not talking the chattering class. Lauren, I'm asking you. I'm asking you a question.
When is he dropping out?
No. Lauren, you can't have it both ways. You want to have it both ways right now.
Whatever. You're talking to yourself.
No. You want to say. You want to say Buttigieg and Klobuchar had no shot. But then when I ask you where's Sanders' path forward, then you're like, oh, here's the right to run.
You're talking to
give it both ways. Eugene, do you see?
If I could finish the sentence, which of
but you can't even answer the question.
Yeah, all right. Whatever. I know you want to box me into your world.
No, I want you to answer the question.
My point is,
you said Klobuchar and Buttigieg had no shot.
You're talking to yourself.
Show me. Okay, explain to me of the remaining states. What is the path forward for victory for Sanders?
This is a different question.
What is the path forward for the victory of Sanders?
Boom.
Okay, so I already told you. I know it's shocking, but okay. The guy gets to actually run and compete now.
Okay.
So the thing is this.
That ain't an answer.
Can I finish? Okay. Is it all right? Can I finish? Can you hold?
Yeah.
Do you have the self-control to listen?
No, I got it.
Biden is probably going to win. We know that. Okay. All right? Are you good now? You feel good?
Okay.
That Biden's going to win?
But you still haven't answered the question. Eugene, do you want to answer the question?
The question is, even though he's probably not going to win, he gets to compete. Again, I know democracy is hard.
Wow. And guess what? Amy gets to compete. And Buttigieg gets to compete. But you said they should have dropped out because they had no shot.
I know your question.
This is hilarious.
Basically, your question is, when is he dropping out?
No, actually,
That's your real question.
No, actually, what my question. First of all,
that's your real
there's
question.
no real question because I asked the real question. The real question is for you to sit here and say, okay, of the 28 remaining states or whatever, here is the path forward.
We know that.
So what you're really saying is there is no path forward. So what the hell you want to stick around? Go ahead, Eugene.
I had a friend that was a big Newt Gingrich supporter, right? And he used to always say to me, the one thing you can tell when a campaign's dead when they start talking about a movement and not a campaign, right? And so I think the real question is, how do Bernie Sanders supporters define victory? And I think Scott made a very indirect point earlier. Their leverage, their leverage is their maximization of delegates at the convention to move the party in the direction they want to. So if I'm Bernie Sanders, I probably do stick in and all the way through to maximize my delegate position. What does that get you? What does that get you? You get to now insert things to the party platform. You get to change the rules of the party for the next primary. You get to You get to negotiate your speaking slot.
He can do that now.
He can't do
Scott. Hold on, Scott.
But promises are promises, but delegates force on the floor is totally different, Scott. As we both
hold on, Scott, and Scott, to that particular point. If you do that, you do exactly what Reverend Jackson articulated in 1988.
Booyah.
And so the point is this here. Right. If you're the Sanders campaign, then that's exactly what Reverend Jackson did.
But that's exactly it.
What are you talking about? Reverend Jackson did exactly that. In 1988.
Did you hear what I said? I said he had no chance.
Who?
Reverend Jackson.
Oh, my God. Okay.
That's the point.
Oh, my God.
That's the point.
I I can't. Okay, my God. Hold up, stop.
I miss this panel.
I need to unpack this here. Wait a minute, I need to unpack this here. So you said Buttigieg and Klobuchar had no shot, but we look at the man. We showed you how Sanders has been getting drilled the last 3 weeks, which really means he has no shot. But you're like, well, but he has the right to run. But they had the right to run. But then I'm explaining what Reverend Jackson did, and it's like, well, but he had no shot. Duh! When you have no shot, that means that you stay in for an ulterior motive. So what Reverend Jackson did, by staying in, he articulated why he stayed in, did exactly what you just said. Reverend Jackson stayed in, changed the party rules to maximize delegates, the speaking slot. He had leverage. In fact, the week of the convention, Reverend Jackson took a bus tour from Chicago to Atlanta. You thought he was a damn candidate, drove Michael Dukakis crazy, and he was able to negotiate Ron Brown becoming, of course, chair of the DNC. The point I'm making is...
Who was his partner at the convention in doing that?
It was actually also Dr. Ron Walters and also Harold Ickes.
Okay.
If you're Sanders, and what I'm saying is, if you're the Sanders camp, that's actually what you articulate. Yeah. What you say is, when you ask the question, why are you staying in, that's what you do. Yep. You do the exact same thing Reverend Jackson did in 1988.
Because what Scott knows is like I know at the conventions, you know, the world sees the 3 days of television. But the real work of the convention is what goes on during the day and what goes on the week and a half before the convention. We have the platform committee and the rules committee and the nomination committee. All the committees are meeting and they're formulating the rules for the party for the next 2 to 4 years.
Right.
And
hear me out though. My point is, because unifying behind Biden and going after Trump earlier versus later, that it's important for Sanders to get out of the race and continue to negotiate, or before he gets out of the race, negotiate for all those points. Because if Biden's going to not be the nominee, then Biden and the DNC can negotiate with him whatever they want to negotiate with him. He doesn't have to stay in to the end. Hold on, because to moderate Democrats and Biden supporters, I'm not a Biden supporter per se, but to that group of people, he gets more by leveraging his delegate getting out now.
His only leverage is two things, Scott. His only leverage is delegates at the convention. And the second thing, these primaries are going to happen either way. So if something's going to happen either way, and I'm already on the ballot, my name's already there, and I'm going to go through it, it makes sense for me to see it all the way to the end. Maximize my delegate leverage. Maximize my delegate leverage.
And Scott,
the DNC's not going anywhere.
The reason is
Listen. How did the last DNC chair vote go? It came very close between him and Tom Perez and Keith Ellison. Tom Perez and Keith Ellison.
Here's why.
Ellison was the Sanders candidate and didn't win because they didn't want that voice in the party, quite frankly. But Sanders has forced, just like Eugene just said,
the reason is superdelegates.
Sanders has forced a conversation that we wouldn't even have about certain
strategy
issues.
Right now, whether he gets out.
The only reason. Here's the deal. Senator Bernie Sanders, first of all, is not a Democrat. Independent, running as a Democrat. No, wait. Goes back to independent, not running as a Democrat. He's 78 years old. You hear the criticism about legislation. Here's the reality. This is his swan song. Yep. And this being his swan song, this is all he has. The reality is here. Just very basic. Answer this here. Would Senate leaders be listening to Bernie Sanders if he wasn't was not running for president?
No, because they wouldn't need to. The threat with Bernie Sanders right now is that he has an army of supporters across this country that are currently activated. It's not like there was like 2 years ago where, he might run for president. He has a following. Right now, people are tuned in. So Bernie Sanders says, okay, you know what? Y'all don't want to listen to me. I'm gonna actually, you know what the perfect example is? 2008, during the middle of the campaign, Hank Paulson had cut a deal with both sides of Congress on a bailout. What happened? John McCain comes in, blows it up. Goes to supporters, blows up the deal, so that Hank Paulson then has to go to Nancy Pelosi and cut the deal rather than with Republicans in the U.S. Senate. Bernie Sanders has the possibility to do that exact same thing right now when it comes to dealing with this coronavirus and other things that are moving through Congress.
Hold on, but if he does it now or later, he doesn't lose that leverage.
Yes, he does.
He merely activates. He activates those Bernieites for Biden.
He doesn't.
And that's what the party and Biden want him to do.
But no, he doesn't. Here's the deal. Here's the deal.
He cares about beating Trump.
He knows that even if he stays in, he can raise $30 million next month. He raised $30 million in May. No. What I'm saying is, so what I'm saying is when you look, when you look at the other campaigns, the other campaigns also made practical decisions because they had to drop out because their money was drying up.
I said that earlier.
So what you're dealing with now is, so if you're Sanders, and what I'm saying is, if you're the Sanders camp, just say it. What you should say is, we're going to stay in this all the way to the end. This is exactly what our strategy is. We're not going anywhere.
But
fine. And what I'm saying is, you go ahead and say it.
First of all, they're going to assess their campaign.
Well, but again, though, I hear what they're saying, but my whole deal is, if you want to use the Reverend Jackson playbook, and understand, to all people who are watching at home, okay, all the people right now who want to dismiss Reverend Jackson, let me remind you, the Reverend Jackson playbook that he ran in 1988 is what created the opportunity for Obama to win in 2008. That was 20 years of being able to change the rules. So don't think for a second that if you drive it out to the convention and you maximize your leverage, you can't impact what happened 20 years later. Last story here, folks. I keep telling y'all, well, we know what the hell. You know what time it is. You know what time it is.
No charcoal grills are allowed.
I'm white. I got you, huh?
Illegally selling water without a permit
On my property.
Whoa! Hey!
You don't live here.
I'm uncomfortable.
Okay, normally I do not show videos of children fighting.
But you're going to.
I'm not done. Normally I don't show videos of children fighting. But when you have a little white kid who decides to roll up on a grown black woman and yell the N-word at her, and then, being a black mama, she says to her daughter, not her son, get on this. I'm sorry, I just could not resist myself. Okay, all I'm saying is, when I saw the video, I couldn't.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
When she was like, get this.
Yeah, no, listen, you dropped.
She said more than that.
Let it be known.
Get this.
You dropped that word. There are no rules and everything's suspended.
Look, we played the other day.
The only rule is to throw hands. Now look, Scott made a pledge earlier. I do think for the culture, if anything happens from that video, I think Scott should defend that kid and that lady.
Scott,
from a litigation standpoint.
The mama was like, I ain't dealing with that. Get this.
Yep.
Okay.
Like we said, handle my light work.
There were crimes committed in that video.
Okay, what were the crimes committed?
It sounds like self-defense to me.
Hate crimes?
Assault.
These kids couldn't have been more than, 6, 8, 10 years old?
Right.
There's a juvenile justice system. When the police get that video, and I know your public may not like me saying this, but the mama in regard to reckless endangerment, the kids in regard to being physically abusive to one another, and she encouraging it, I think a juvenile judge would be interested in that.
And guess what, Scott? You're going to defend that mama.
Yes, you are.
I'm not.
You're going to defend that mama.
I don't do juvenile crimes, but I will say this.
Scott, you're going to defend that mama.
They will go to mediation, and they will get help.
But you know, a high-powered lawyer like yourself will make sure that kid is fine, right?
Well, I don't care what the little white kid said. The mama shouldn't be encouraging violence. You shouldn't be encouraging violence.
Well, the thing is this. We got to care what the little white kids said.
Are you listening to me?
Little white kids, listen, little white kids using the N-word turning Little white kids using the N-word turning to grown white men using guns and using the N-word. So we got to care about what
reprimanded. She should have took that kid home.
He was reprimanded.
He was. was.
Yeah, well, he got his butt kicked.
He was reprimanded.
Reprimand.
Didn't stop him from keep coming. But what I'm saying is, we shouldn't, no matter what the basis of violence is, it shouldn't be encouraged, and you shouldn't be running videos like that, because inherent and indirectly or directly, you're encouraging violence about between young people, one black, one white.
You let
Stop
him say all of that.
You did it.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm letting him finish his point.
Because I'm right.
Have
you seen it?
Because all
Look
the
what
folks
he just did.
Because all the folks on YouTube, Facebook saying that's bullshit, Scott saying. That's why I let him do that shit.
Regulated by somebody
You done?
on the internet. You ought to be regulated.
You done? Any other comment on this?
Government Scott down there.
Really?
Any other comment on this here? Hey, run that shit back.
I'm not watching it. Don't run it back.
Run that back.
Run it back. While he's down.
But what about,
you got at least 8 counts.
But what about when two people are fighting? Isn't there a difference when you have two people fighting back and forth?
Well,
the assault charge.
You can take into account who's being, who started it,
right?
Who's ending it. Force must be met with force for self-defense.
Isn't she liable for endangerment of a child?
Reckless endangerment.
Yeah.
Of a child. Watch. Keep an eye on this story, ladies. Keep an eye on the story.
All I know is
we got Roland running a video of it.
All I know is Chad got his ass whooped by a sister in
it's
a
not
dress.
that funny. You ever got your ass
in a dress? Not well, sister in a dress with one house shoe on.
It's never fun.
It's never fun. All I'm simply saying is white people.
I think you got to be more responsible about this.
I'm irresponsible. White people.
You are?
I'm advising y'all. Do not raise your kids to yell the N-word at no grown black woman, especially when she got Layla Ali on her side. That's all I'm saying. You'll get your ass beat. I'm just saying.
I've never been more disappointed in you in my life.
And if you're a drunk white woman on the plane, do not call the black male flight attendant the N-word when you got a sister sitting next to you who about to whoop your ass as well. All I'm saying is, as a public service announcement,
a public service
to all white Americans, it ain't gonna end well if you do that.
Violence is never the answer.
You're gonna end up on our crazy-ass white people segment. Y'all support Roland Martin Unfiltered by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can go to use our Cash App, Square, and PayPal to support our Bring the Funk fan club. Y'all know what we do. Of course, we had General Kip Ward, retired 3-star general. So Friday show, folks, we're going to have retired 4-star General Lloyd Austin on the show. One of the high-ranking African-Americans ever in the history of the military. He's going to be right here, talk about the coronavirus and really the role the military can play. So we're looking forward to having him on the show as well. We also, if you got any suggestions on black health experts you want to see us talk to regarding coronavirus, send us an email by going to RolandSMartin.com, going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can join us. I want to thank our panel, Scott, Eugene, Lauren. I want to thank Steve Perry, Bill Spriggs, as well as General Kip Ward for being guests as well. All right, y'all, we got to go. I got to go give Scott some lessons on being a black man in 2020. Holla!